Welcome to English Avenue YouTube, the channel to learn English the easy way. Let's start. Ladies and gentlemen, today I invite you to embark on an extraordinary journey, one that will not only move your heart, but also awaken within you a deep sense of inspiration. This is a tale that speaks of resilience, of unwavering determination, and of a creativity so powerful that it transformed the world of entertainment forever. But this is no ordinary story, nor is it simply the biography of an actor or a comedian. No, my friends, this is the story of a man who transcended his time, whose name is eternally inscribed in the golden annals of cinematic history. A man who, despite his personal sorrows and struggles, dedicated his life to bringing laughter and joy to millions. A man who carried an entire world on his shoulders, all while wearing a bowler hat, a cane in his hand, and a tiny mustache that would become iconic. His name? Sir Charles Spencer Chaplin. But to all of us, he will forever be remembered as the one and only Charlie Chaplin. There are many great artists in the history of film, but none can truly compare to him. His brilliance was unparalleled, his work timeless, and his legacy eternal. He was a master of his craft, an innovator who reshaped the very essence of comedy and silent cinema. His humor knew no boundaries, reaching across generations, languages, and cultures, uniting people through the universal power of laughter. And yet, beyond the limelight, behind the grand applause and adoration of millions, was a man who faced unimaginable hardships, relentless rejection, and deep personal sorrow. He endured poverty, abandonment, and ridicule, but never once did he surrender to despair. Instead, he transformed his pain into art, his struggles into masterpieces, and his setbacks into stepping stones that would lead him to greatness. Even today, decades after his passing, his influence remains stronger than ever. His films continue to bring joy to audiences worldwide. His story still serves as an inspiration to dreamers and creators, and his legacy proves that no obstacle is insurmountable for those who refuse to give up. My dear friends, this is not just a story. It is a saga of survival, a testament to the unbreakable human spirit, a journey of perseverance against all odds, of overcoming adversity, and ultimately, of achieving immortality through art. So, I encourage you to stay with me until the very end, because what you are about to hear is not just the history of a man, but the living proof that no matter how dark life may seem, as long as one holds on to hope and determination, the light will always shine through. Are you ready? Then let us begin this incredible tale of the legendary Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin came into the world on April 16, 1889, in the bustling city of London, England, a place of contrasts, where grand theaters stood side by side with the struggles of the working class. His parents, Hannah Chaplin and Charles Chaplin Sr., were deeply immersed in the vibrant yet unforgiving world of performing arts. They graced the stage, captivated audiences with their talent, and lived for the exhilarating applause that followed every performance. Music halls and theaters were their domain, places where they poured their hearts into their craft. But for all the magic that performance brought into their lives, there was also hardship. And young Charlie would soon learn that the stage, much like life itself, was unpredictable. His father, Charles Chaplin Sr., had once been a successful singer, a man with a voice that could command attention. However, he succumbed to the demons of alcohol, losing himself in addiction until it consumed him entirely. His once promising career crumbled, and with it his sense of responsibility. Unable, or unwilling, to bear the weight of fatherhood, he vanished from their lives, leaving behind an empty space that would never truly be filled. The burden of raising Charlie and his older half-brother, Sidney, fell solely upon Hannah Chaplin. Hannah, though a woman of immense talent and spirit, faced the cruel reality of trying to survive in a world that was not kind to single mothers, let alone one struggling to make a living as an actress. She did everything she could to provide for her sons, taking on whatever performances she could find, singing on stage, and fighting to keep a roof over their heads. But the world of entertainment was fickle, and stability was a luxury they could not afford. For Charlie, childhood was not a time of carefree innocence, but rather one of uncertainty, where hunger was a constant companion and poverty loomed over them like an unshakable shadow. Despite these hardships, Charlie's love for the theater was undeniable. He would watch his mother perform, mesmerized by the way she could command a stage, transform into different characters, and captivate an audience. Even in their darkest moments, when food was scarce and their home little more than a cramped, damp room, there was something magical about those moments when his mother took the stage. It was a spark that ignited something deep within him, a dream, though distant and uncertain, that one day he too would stand before an audience and create something unforgettable. But fate had yet more trials in store for young Charlie. Life would test him, push him to his limits, and force him to fight for his survival. Little did he know, those struggles would become the foundation upon which he would build his legacy. If you believe life showed kindness to them despite their hardships, you would be terribly mistaken. Theirs was an existence marked by deprivation, a daily battle against hunger and despair. The walls of the rooms they called home were often damp and crumbling, the ceilings leaking when the rain poured, and the air heavy with the scent of poverty. Some nights, there was not a scrap of food on the table, and hunger gnawed at their bellies with merciless persistence. For a growing boy like Charlie, the ache of an empty stomach was unbearable. But he was not the only one suffering. His mother, Hannah, ever the devoted parent, would often feign satisfaction, pretending that she had already eaten, just so that her children could have a few more bites of whatever meager portion they could find. Sidney, the older of the two brothers, understood the truth but never spoke of it. Charlie, still young and innocent, watched it all with wide eyes, unknowingly absorbing lessons about sacrifice, resilience, and silent suffering. Their living conditions were in constant flux. Landlords grew impatient when the rent was late, and the Chaplins found themselves moving from one squalid lodging to another, always at the mercy of an eviction notice. They carried what little they had in their hands, their few belongings stuffed into small, tattered bags. Each new dwelling was no better than the last, a single damp room, sometimes shared with strangers, where the cold crept in through the cracks and the sound of misery echoed through the thin walls. And yet, despite these insufferable conditions, Charlie remained a child. And children, no matter how severe their misfortunes, always managed to carve out moments of laughter in the bleakest of places. He found joy in the simplest of things. A funny face drawn in the dust on the window, an old hat he could twirl between his fingers, a silly walk he invented to amuse Sidney when their bellies ached with hunger. Even as the world crumbled around him, a flicker of joy never fully abandoned him. Hannah Chaplin, for all the hardship she endured, possessed an undeniable gift. She was a woman of talent, blessed with a voice that could soothe, a presence that could command attention, and an artistry that made her a true performer. She had once held the promise of a thriving career, one that could have lifted her family out of poverty, if only fortune had favored her. Each night, she stepped onto the stage, singing her heart out, hoping to earn enough coins to put food on the table. Charlie watched her from the wings, utterly enchanted. The glow of the stage lights, the hush of the audience, the magic of a performance. He took it all in, dreaming of the day he too would stand before a crowd and captivate them as she did. But dreams, like fragile glass, are often shattered by the weight of reality. Fate, cruel and unrelenting, struck once more. One evening, in the middle of a performance, Hannah's voice wavered. At first, it was barely noticeable, a slight crack, a hesitation in a note. But then, as she tried to push through, her voice failed her completely. No matter how desperately she fought to continue, not a single melody escaped her lips. A murmur spread through the audience, confusion quickly turning to irritation. The restless crowd grew impatient, their sympathy replaced by frustration. Jeers filled the theater, mocking laughter echoing off the walls. Objects were thrown onto the stage, sharp words cutting deeper than any blade. Charlie, standing helplessly behind the curtain, watched in horror as his mother's moment of dignity crumbled before his eyes. In that instant, he understood something profound. The world was unkind to those who faltered, merciless to those who failed. And as his mother was ushered off the stage, tears threatening to spill down her cheeks, a realization settled deep within Charlie's young heart. If he were ever to survive in this world, he would have to find a way to make people love him before they could turn on him. And then, in the midst of humiliation and despair, something truly extraordinary unfolded. An event that would change the course of young Charlie's life forever. As the audience jeered and hurled insults at his mother, a small boy, barely 5 years old, stepped onto the stage. With wide, determined eyes and a heart filled with a mix of fear and wonder, Charlie took hold of the microphone. There was no hesitation in his movements, no trace of doubt in his spirit. He began to sing, his voice carrying an innocence so pure that the crowd, moments before hostile, fell silent. Then he danced, his small feet moving instinctively to an invisible rhythm, weaving a spell that captured the hearts of everyone watching. And just like that, the atmosphere shifted. Laughter filled the air. Applause thundered through the theater. And the same audience that had been ready to drive his mother away was now completely mesmerized by a child who had, without realizing it, found his destiny. In that moment, young Charlie Chaplin felt something he had never felt before, a powerful connection with the audience. He felt the electricity of their laughter, the warmth of their applause, the intoxicating magic of performance. It was as though something deep inside him had awakened, something he had never known existed, but now seemed to burn with an undeniable force. He understood, with a clarity far beyond his years, that he was born for this. He was meant to make people laugh, to bring them joy, to step into the spotlight and never look back. But life, as if determined to test his spirit, was far from done with him. The years that followed were unrelenting in their cruelty. Hunger and poverty continued to wrap their cold fingers around his existence, tightening their grip until even the simplest necessities became unattainable luxuries. The harsh reality of their situation took its toll on his mother, whose once vibrant spirit began to fade under the crushing weight of hardship. The pain of watching his mother deteriorate was almost too much to bear. Her laughter, once a comforting melody in his childhood, grew quieter with each passing day. Her mind, once sharp and full of dreams, became lost in the shadows of an illness she could not control. Eventually, the inevitable happened. The world that had already taken so much from Charlie now stole the one person he cherished most. His mother, Hannah, was deemed mentally unfit to care for him and Sydney. She was taken away, institutionalized in a mental hospital, where the doctors could do little to bring her back to the woman she once was. Charlie, still just a boy, stood frozen as he watched her disappear behind the cold doors of the asylum. He called out for her, his small hands gripping at the empty air, but his cries were ignored. She was gone, lost to a place he could not reach. And so, at an age when most children are shielded by the love and protection of their parents, Charlie and his brother Sydney were left completely alone. No home, no family, no one to turn to. They became wanderers, two small figures lost in the unforgiving streets of London, surviving on whatever scraps they could find. The cold nights were merciless, the days endless struggles against hunger and exhaustion. There were times when Charlie had nothing but the torn clothes on his back, and the faint hope that tomorrow might be kinder. Picture, if you will, a fragile child shivering in the biting wind, his stomach aching from hunger, his eyes scanning the filth of alleyways for a morsel of food. This was not a scene from a tragic novel. This was the reality of Charlie Chaplin's childhood. Yet, despite the unimaginable hardship, Charlie never surrendered to despair. He did not allow misery to consume him. Somewhere deep inside, there was still a flicker of hope, a stubborn refusal to be defeated by circumstance. He clung to his dream with everything he had, believing, even in the darkest moments, that there was something greater waiting for him beyond the suffering. Forced by their desperate situation, Charlie and Sydney ended up in the workhouses, grim, oppressive institutions where the destitute toiled endlessly in exchange for shelter and meager meals. These places were designed to break spirits, to remind the poor of their place in society, to strip away any remnants of dignity. At just 7 years old, Charlie was thrown into this brutal system, separated from his brother, and left to navigate its horrors alone. The work was grueling, the discipline harsh, and the conditions suffocating. Every morning, he woke up to the sound of orders being barked, to the sight of hopelessness etched into the faces of those around him. But even the suffering in the workhouse could not prepare him for what awaited him upon returning to his mother. The woman he had once known, the one who had fought so hard to keep her children safe, was now a shadow of herself. Her illness had worsened, pulling her further away from reality. Some days, she would smile at him as though nothing had changed. Other days, her eyes would glaze over, empty and unfamiliar, as if she no longer recognized the son standing before her. Charlie could do nothing but watch helpless, as the doctors once again took her away. This time, he knew she would never come back. He screamed. He begged. He fought against the inevitable, but it was all in vain. She was lost to him, and in that moment, the last fragile thread of his childhood was severed. He was no longer just a boy struggling to survive. He was an orphan of the streets, a child abandoned by fate, left to face the world on his own. Charlie's arrival in America was nothing short of a rebirth. The bustling streets, the flashing lights, and the electrifying energy of the entertainment industry filled him with a sense of limitless possibility. Here, in this land where dreams could become reality, he was determined to carve out a place for himself. It wasn't an easy road. Hollywood was filled with talented performers, each one vying for a moment in the spotlight. But Charlie, with his relentless drive and unique comedic instincts, was not just another hopeful actor. He had something rare, an ability to captivate without words, to communicate profound emotions through movement alone. In 1913, his big break arrived. Keystone Studios, a prominent film production company, noticed his performances and offered him a small role in a silent film. To many, it might have seemed like an insignificant step, but to Charlie, it was an open door, one that he had spent his entire life trying to reach. He took the opportunity with both hands, determined to make his mark. However, he didn't just want to be another actor playing interchangeable roles. He had a vision, an idea for a character that would be unlike anything Hollywood had seen before. And so piece by piece he created him, the Tramp. The character was instantly recognizable. The oversized clothes, the tight-fitting coat, the tiny bowler hat, the toothbrush mustache, and of course the iconic waddling walk. At first, producers were skeptical. They didn't understand his vision. But when Charlie stepped in front of the camera and brought the Tramp to life, the world took notice. With nothing more than exaggerated expressions and precise body movements, he made audiences laugh, cry, and see themselves in this charming yet tragic figure. The Tramp wasn't just a comedic character. He was a reflection of society, a symbol of resilience, of hope, of the human spirit in the face of hardship. His films quickly gained traction, spreading like wildfire. Producers, who had once been hesitant, were now clamoring for more. In just a few years, the boy who had once scavenged for food on the streets of London had become the most famous face in cinema. By 1917, Charlie Chaplin wasn't just successful. He was a global phenomenon. People lined up for hours just to see his films. His face adorned posters, newspapers, and magazine covers in every country, transcending language barriers with his universal brand of humor. But despite his meteoric rise to fame, Charlie never forgot the struggles of his past. Behind the laughter and the bright lights of Hollywood, he remained deeply connected to the little boy who had once cried out for his mother, to the child who had known hunger and loneliness. That pain, buried deep within him, was what made his performances so authentic. His comedy wasn't just about making people laugh. It was about making them feel, about showing them that even in the darkest moments, joy could be found. Yet Charlie was not content with simply being a performer. He wanted control over his art, his stories, his vision. At a time when actors were at the mercy of powerful film studios, he did the unthinkable. In 1918, he built his own studio, Chaplin Studios, a move that sent shockwaves through Hollywood. No longer bound by the demands of producers, he could now create films on his own terms, telling the stories he believed in. Then, in 1921, he released a film that would go down in history, The Kid. It was more than just a comedy. It was deeply personal. The film told the story of a poor man caring for an orphan child, echoing the hardships Charlie himself had faced. The world laughed, the world cried, and the world fell in love with his storytelling. With this film, Charlie proved that cinema was not just entertainment. It was art, it was emotion, it was a means to touch souls and change perspectives. His power and influence in Hollywood continued to grow. By the late 1920s, he was not just an actor. He was the most powerful filmmaker in the industry. While most actors were being paid modest wages, Charlie was earning millions per film. He was not only the most famous entertainer in the world, but also the wealthiest. Yet for all his success, he remained a perfectionist. He would spend years meticulously crafting a single film, agonizing over every scene, every movement, every expression. To him, movies weren't just about telling stories. They were about creating history. Then the industry changed. Sound entered the world of cinema. Silent films, once the pinnacle of entertainment, were now being replaced by talking pictures. Everyone in Hollywood urged Charlie to adapt, to abandon silent films and embrace this new era of storytelling. But Charlie, stubborn in his artistry, refused. He believed that emotions were stronger than words, that true expression didn't require dialogue. And so, in 1931, when the world was convinced that silent films were dead, he released City Lights. The film was a masterpiece, a testament to the power of silent storytelling. Even without a single spoken word, audiences wept at its final scene. A moment so poignant that even decades later, it is regarded as one of the greatest in cinematic history. With City Lights, Charlie proved that words were secondary to emotion, that a glance, a gesture, a single tear could speak louder than any dialogue ever could. But as Hollywood evolved, so did the world. By the late 1930s, the rise of Adolf Hitler cast a shadow over Europe. Charlie, like many, noticed something unsettling. Hitler's distinctive mustache bore an uncanny resemblance to his own. Some even joked about the similarities. But Charlie saw an opportunity. He would use his platform, his comedy, his voice, to stand against tyranny. In 1940, he released The Great Dictator, his first ever talking film. But this was no ordinary movie. It was a statement. A bold, fearless denunciation of Hitler and fascism. And at the film's climax, Charlie delivered what is now considered one of the most powerful speeches in history. "We think too much and feel too little," he declared. "More than machinery, we need humanity. Let us fight for a world of reason. Let us fight for freedom." His words echoed around the world, inspiring millions. The film was a triumph, proof that cinema could be more than just entertainment. It could be a force for change. But Hollywood, ever fickle, soon turned against him. His influence was too great, his independence too threatening. Accusations were hurled at him. His name was smeared. And in 1952, the very country that had once embraced him now cast him out. Charlie Chaplin was exiled from America, forced to leave behind the industry he had helped shape. Heartbroken but not defeated, he settled in Switzerland, living a quiet life with his wife, Una O'Neill, and their children. Though far from Hollywood, he was never forgotten. Then in 1972, after 20 years in exile, Hollywood finally acknowledged its mistake. They invited him back, awarding him an honorary Oscar. As he stepped onto the stage, the audience erupted into a standing ovation, the longest in history, lasting 12 minutes. Charlie Chaplin had won. He had outlasted his critics, survived the storms, and secured his place in history. On Christmas Day, 1977, at the age of 88, Charlie Chaplin passed away in his sleep. The world fell silent. A man who had dedicated his life to making others laugh was gone. Tributes poured in from every corner of the globe. Yet even in death, Charlie's story took an unexpected turn. 3 months later, thieves stole his body, demanding ransom from his family. But Una, with quiet strength, refused to pay. Charlie would have laughed at this, she said. Eventually, the thieves were caught, and his body was returned to its rightful resting place, secured in a reinforced grave. And so, though the man himself is gone, his legacy remains eternal. Every time we laugh, every time we watch a film that moves us, every time a silent moment speaks louder than words, Charlie Chaplin is there. He taught us that success is not measured by wealth, but by impact. That laughter is a universal language. That resilience conquers all. Charlie Chaplin was not just an actor, not just a filmmaker. He was a force of nature, an artist who changed the world. His life was a testament to the power of never giving up, of chasing dreams no matter how impossible they seem. So, if he could rise from nothing, if he could defy the odds and create a legacy that will never fade, why not you? Dream big, work hard, and never stop believing, because as Charlie once said, a day without laughter is a day wasted.